Cultural washing definitely happens within like the environment that you're raised in.
Kind of forgetting your own roots to assimilate yourself into the culture that you're currently surrounded by.
Personally, for me, it means being very incorporated into somebody else's culture who are not from the same country or the same background as you.
I mean, a lot of people look at me and they don't understand that I was born here. So a lot of the time I get that stereotypical question like, where are you from? And I'm like, oh, well, I was born in Canada. And they're like, no, where are you really from? Like, where are your parents from? And I'm like, why is that relevant? I was born and raised in Canada. I speak fluent English. English is technically my first language. So why are you asking me that, or why is that relevant to you knowing anything about me? I think if anything, it's the fact that I was born in Canada is more relevant than anything else about my background.
All of us know like we're not going to be able to fit in if we're not going to abide by their rules and everything. We try to drop everything so we can relate to our white peers more.
I feel like growing up in Nepal, because I spent most of my childhood in Nepal, that has a big impact on my identity. And like growing up in a country where my mom was a single parent as opposed to all other families, and like obviously she was kind of discriminated because she didn't have a husband to like support her family and her kid. I grew up in a very predominantly white neighborhood, went to a high school where I was one of the only Asian or tanned kids. And also just being in a different country as to where you were from, your media is different, like the people you look at in the media and films and TV shows, music, everything becomes different. Like growing up, especially, I feel like it is so important in terms of self-confidence to be able to relate to the people in media, but for a lot of Asian people who live in Canada, they can't really do that because there aren't many Asian figures in the media.
Like, I guess media representation of brown people is usually like they have this thick accent, they're very, very smart, they come from very conservative homes, and that's not how I grew up and that's not who I am. I mean, I have an identity crisis like pretty much once a month. It's been a common thing since about 3 years ago. I feel like the older I'm getting, the more I'm like, wow, I literally don't fit into any one specific group. This is great. I'm like, yeah, like I definitely fit in with my family and my parents more, and my friends definitely don't understand me as much as my parents do. But then there are lots of days where it's the complete opposite, where I definitely identify more with my friend group, and I think, no, my parents definitely don't understand me. So I'm definitely always caught in the middle. I don't really think I felt in place or in control or like I belonged anywhere until I got to university, and that's only because I was surrounded by people who look like me and people from other backgrounds and other cultures where it was okay to be mixed and it was okay to be a 50-50 split between, I guess, white and whatever your actual background is. So I'm really fortunate to be at a university where being culturally diverse is the norm.
My cultural background is a little hard to explain because at 11 months old, I was actually adopted from China. I was raised in a super white family. I went to school at a French Catholic high school. I am the most ethnic person in Aurora, I swear. Like growing up, I never thought anything different other than like when I went to like Chinatown, then I'd be like, whoa. Like when I was younger, my dad used to try and culture me so hard and be like, bring me to like Asian markets and stuff like that. And he was like, do you want to learn Mandarin? And I was like, no, like, I don't know why I need to learn Mandarin. Like, I thought I looked like you. Like, I thought I was white and only had to speak French and English. So some of the older generation, they look at me and they're like speaking Mandarin, Cantonese, like expecting me to understand. And I'm looking at them like, no, like, I don't understand anything you're saying to me right now. And they're looking at me like, oh, like, what do you mean? Like, you look Asian, like, why don't you speak Cantonese or Mandarin? So when I do go to an area that's predominantly Asian, definitely feel left out, definitely feel like when I speak English or anything like that, they stare at me, or when I ask what this is or what that is, they look at me like, girl, you're already supposed to know that.
I just started my new program in the esthetician program at Humber College. Obviously, stereotypically, there's a lot of Vietnamese people in there. I myself am a Vietnamese person. I'm one of the only Asians, along with those Vietnamese people in that program. And, you know, looking at myself and then everyone else in the classroom, it just looks like I should belong in that group because they all sit together, speak Vietnamese to each other amongst themselves, and it makes me feel really left out. And I never felt more like a white person in my entire life.
The way my personality is shown is very different in both groups. So with my parents, I'm usually speaking to them in fluent Urdu. I've always noticed that, not just with Urdu, but with any language, like every language has its own personality. So the way I talk to my parents in Urdu is very different from the way I talk to my friends in English. Not necessarily to say that the content is different, but just English is like a mixture of like 7 different languages, whereas Urdu is like a completely separate language from a completely separate culture that has completely separate meanings. So there are certain things about me that you can tell I'm from a different culture, and you can tell that I'm from the culture that I look like I'm from, but then there are also a lot of things about me that don't fit that mold. So there's that type of expectation that because I look like I'm from somewhere else, I need to fully identify with that place, as if that's the only important thing that a person can care about. They put these expectations on you without knowing anything about you, just based off your skin color, and trying to reject that image because it's usually based off stereotypes and based off no validity.
I remember one time my friend's ex-boyfriend, she was dating him at the time, he disliked me because I was not Asian enough. And I'm just like, it really hurt, and I'm just like, what does that have to do with anything? I'm still normal. I can make a conversation with you and everything. Thinking about that, it's just hard to consider the fine line of being Asian enough. What considers being Asian enough? Is it because you like anime, or because you speak your own language fluently? It's kind of a lose-lose situation no matter what you do. You either assimilate into the culture you're surrounded by, or you have to stay to your own roots. It's hard to figure out who you really are. And being in between places, being either Asian or white, it's hard to figure out who you really are. So personally, I'm still trying to find my identity.
That's just where we clash, but doesn't mean that Asian culture is wrong or necessarily negative. That's just the life that they live, and it's very valid, and everybody should be able to live the life that they want if they want to be culturally washed, if they want to be very in touch with their culture. So there's nothing wrong about being culturally washed or being very in touch with your culture. It's just your own way of living, and nobody should get judged by being so conservative or being too progressive, like being in touch with their Asian culture versus not. Like, that's just everyone's own decision and everyone's own way of growing up, and there's nothing wrong with either, I would say.